I recently finished playing Pokémon Stadium 2 on stream, and it got me thinking about when I played through Pokémon Stadium 1 and the differences between the two games. I had a lot of thoughts I wanted to get off my mind, so I figured I'd make a more structured video about them. This isn't exactly going to be a review of either game, just my general thoughts on each game mode available. For reference, I only played Pokémon Stadium 1 up to the point where I was able to teach my Pikachu Surf, but I fully completed Stadium 2. The biggest difference between the two games is the Stadium 2 exclusive Earl's Pokémon Academy, which holds a genuinely stunning amount of information about the Pokémon available in this game. There are two main areas within the Academy, the library and the classroom. The library contains an encyclopedia of every item, Pokémon, move, and even egg group in the game. This includes the level and method each Pokémon learns every move, if that Pokémon gets a bonus from using it, any added effects of those moves, and the method of evolution for each Pokémon. With how complicated some modern evolutions can be, I think this is the feature I value the most returning in future games. There's even a type matchup chart that includes information on dual type matchups and a list of Pokémon that matches that type. It can be a little clunky, especially if you need to chain breed any moves onto a Pokémon. You have to see if that Pokémon can learn it as an egg move, go to that Pokémon's egg group, see which Pokémon are there, look through each of their learn sets, and see if and how they learn that move. Being able to click through within these menus would be a massive time save. It also unfortunately doesn't show you where to catch any of these Pokémon. You need to go talk to the professor for that, but otherwise contains everything you could need to build a team. In the second room in the Academy, the classroom, you can review all the knowledge you find in the library. Earl hosts several lectures on rules, mechanics, even battle strategies. And not just type effectiveness, things like guessing when your opponent will switch, or several special combos like using Stomp on a minimized Pokémon, or how to use weather effectively. Once you've sat through his lectures, you can test your knowledge in two tests, a written exam and a practical exam. Each written exam consists of 10 timed multiple choice questions, with 8 being a passing score. Most of the questions aren't too difficult as someone who's played these games for 30 years, but every now and again I'd run into a question that even stumped me. The practical exam provides you with 6 Pokémon, and it's your job to pick the 3 that work best against your opponent's strategy, which they helpfully tell you beforehand. This ranges from use fire against grass to notice all your opponent's Pokémon are female and all your Pokémon are male and half of them know Attract. You can win these fights without picking the correct Pokémon, but the game only grades you on which Pokémon you choose to fight with, so making the wrong choice will only give you partial credit regardless of results. The other area that's exclusive to Stadium 2 is Your Room, which lets you view your room from your house in New Barktown. I really like being able to decorate your room, and seeing it in 3D is a nice touch, but ultimately this is a fairly bare-bones feature, especially considering you really need to rely on the few gifts your mom or the mystery gift girl gives you to decorate. This is more of a complaint about Generation 2 as a whole, but I still wish there was an area in-game where I could just buy plushies or plants. The only area exclusive to Stadium 1 is the Hall of Fame, which records every Pokémon that's in your team when you beat either the Gym Leader Castle or any of the Stadium Cups. It feels like the only reason this building exists is to give you a special Psyduck for beating either mode with every Pokémon at least once. The Pokémon Lab is probably the least changed feature between games. Both labs allow you to check your Pokédex, arrange the items and Pokémon in both your bag and PC, and, if you have 2 games in the transfer packs, trade Pokémon between them. The Professor's Pokédex is a little more in-depth than the Pokédexes in the main games, showing you which Pokémon you've seen, caught, and even which ones you still currently own, making these the only games where having a living dex actually matters. By selecting a Pokémon you've encountered, you can bring up a nice little 3D model of the Kanto region and or the Johto region, showing where and when you can catch that Pokémon. I honestly don't have much to say about it, I just think the 3D map is neat and wanted to make note of it. The other 2 areas that haven't really changed between games are the Game Boy Tower and the Free Battle Arena. Both are fairly self-explanatory. The Free Battle Arena lets you battle for free with your friends, and the Game Boy Tower is a tower-sized Game Boy. The only comment I really have on either of these game modes is that the Free Battle Arena lets you play with up to 4 players, despite multi-battles not being a feature yet. You just fight a regular 1v1 battle, but only the owner of each Pokémon can issue commands to their Pokémon. However, when selecting a Pokémon to bring into battle, you can even select Pokémon from other players' game packs, so it's not like you're limited by who each player has caught. I don't know why this exists. Nothing is stopping you from just forming teams and colluding above game or just passing the controller between yourselves, but again, just wanted to make note of it. The Gym Leader Castle offers something of a story mode for each game, emulating your journey through the region. The Stadium 1 version is a standard 3 trainers representing either a route from the original game or a gym trainer culminating in a battle with the gym leader. The Stadium 2 version focuses exclusively on the gyms and the gym trainers, even reducing the number of fights to match the size of the gym, going as far as the Olivine gym having just the Jasmine fight. This is somewhat compensated for by the inclusion of the Team Rocket Takeover, something largely ignored by Stadium 1, Including the Kanto gyms, this basically evens out the number of fights within the castle of each game, 37 for Stadium 1 and 38 for Stadium 2. The biggest difference between the two castles is the reward you get from beating the Elite Four and Champion. In Stadium 1, you randomly receive 1 of 8 what I like to refer to as choice Pokémon. That is, Pokémon that at some point in the game you had to make a choice between. That's the 3 starters, the 2 available Hitmons, Eevee, and the 2 fossils. This is especially helpful in the Generation 1 games, allowing you to acquire these Pokémon and helping you complete the Pokédex without the need for other players or replaying an entire game. Although this is somewhat undercut when you remember version exclusives exist, meaning you would still need at least one other game cart regardless. In exchange, Pokémon Stadium 2 gives you access to a move relearner, allowing one of the Pokémon you brought into the Hall of Fame to remember one of its level up moves. I personally use this feature to reteach Ho-Oh and Lugia their signature moves, which are normally too high level to know when caught in Crystal. Otherwise, having to go through 5 fights with at least one Pokémon without a full moveset feels too difficult and time consuming to be valuable. The Kids Club in Stadium 1, or just the minigame area in Stadium 2, offers a nice break from battling. The minigame mode in Stadium 2 is a distinct improvement over Stadium 1. Not just the minigames themselves, but the whole presentation. In Stadium 1, it's just a matter of first X number of wins overall. But in Stadium 2, there's a whole random element to how many points each game is worth, with the potential to even steal points from the point leader. Stadium 2 also has a quiz mode reminiscent of the quizzes from the Academy. You can either go for a high score within a time limit, or compete against other players to get 10 points first. Overall, the minigames in Stadium 1 feel simpler. A lot of mashing buttons, reaction time tests, and basic memory games. My personal standouts are Ekans' Hoop Hurl, Sushi Go Round, and Rock Harden. Ekans' Hoop Hurl is the only game that requires some level of dexterity, although with only an N64 controller to work with, things can get a bit dicey. Sushi Go Round offers an interesting bit of strategy, whether you go for combos increasing your score, or break it for a valuable piece of sushi. Rock Harden looks like a simple timing game, and to some extent that's true, but making the ability to protect yourself take up some of your limited health bar adds an additional level of risk every time a rock gets launched at you. Stadium 2 still holds a couple of the simpler minigames from Stadium 1, but hosts more variety in its minigames in general, so Clear Cut Challenge, Pichu's Power Plant, and Streaming Stampede don't stand out as much. Some of the minigames in Stadium 2 are just reworked versions of minigames from Stadium 1. Pichu's Power Plant is a better Thundering Dynamo, and Tumbling Togepi is a more complex Run Rattata Run. Delibird's Delivery is more of a side grade of Sushi Go Round. The combo system still exists, but now you have to dodge Swinub as well as compete with other players. Stadium 2 also adds the ability to bring in your own Pokemon to play in the minigames. This doesn't change anything mechanically within the minigame, but does give some friendship to the Pokemon that play. This also opens up the opportunity to play with Pokemon you wouldn't normally be able to. Considering how many of the original Pokemon from these minigames evolve with friendship, it's surprising more of these alternate Pokemon aren't evolved forms of the original Pokemon. Tumbling Togepi would certainly be difficult to pull off with a Togetic, but Gutsy Golbat could easily feature a Crobat. Egg Emergency would work perfectly with a Blissey, and Streaming Stampede could fit almost any Pokemon easily. I know adding characters into a game isn't easy as pressing the Add a Character button, but if more of these evolutions were available in the minigames, it might not have taken 20 years for the internet to figure out these games give friendship. The biggest difference within the shared game modes, in my opinion, is the variety within the main Stadium mode. There's very little variation found within the various cups of Stadium 1. The biggest difference is the level caps of the Pokemon you're allowed to enter with. The oddest aspect of these cups is the higher level cap in the Petite Cup than the Pika Cup, despite the Petite Cup also limiting you to unevolved Pokemon. The Poké Cup and the Prime Cup are featured in both games. They're a standard battle mode and use all the rules you would expect from competitive Pokemon going forward. Something odd I noticed was that both games require their Stadium modes to have you win 10 trophies. The Poké Cup requires 4 wins in both games, however the Prime Cup in Stadium 1 requires 4 victories per difficulty, but only wants 1 victory in Stadium 2. Stadium 2 adds 2 new cups, the Little Cup and the Challenge Cup. The Little Cup is limited to level 5 and under Pokemon that would go on to become a standard if less popular battle mode in future Pokemon games. The funniest thing about the Little Cup is that it's intended to be used with the new breeding mechanic, but any Pokemon that's under level 5 can be entered, meaning you can go out and catch a level 2 Pokemon and enter it as well. You can EV train it, but from my testing it basically doesn't change their stats at all. The Challenge Cup was probably my least favorite part of completing Stadium 2. You're given 6 random Pokemon with 4 semi-random moves. You always have 1 powerful stab move, at least 1 decent power coverage move, and at least 1 status move, so you're usually given a decent moveset on all your Pokemon, though I found I always wind up gravitating to 3 or 4 of the given 6 Pokemon. It's a fun idea, but my main complaint is having to challenge a randomized game mode 8 times. I'd be fine with 2 wins per difficulty, but it just felt like I had to spend too much time on it. Then again, I'm not a huge fan of randomization in general, so maybe that's just me. In both games, once you've completed the Gym Leader Castle and Stadium modes, a final fight appears for you to challenge, a 1v6 against Mewtwo in Stadium 1, and a 3v6 against Silver using Ho-Oh, Lugia, and Mewtwo in Stadium 2. Both of these fights were honestly a bit disappointing. I like the build-up of the Mewtwo fight, his appearance felt properly menacing like a final boss should, but because you outnumber him so greatly in the actual fight, it never really felt like a challenge, beyond Psychic as a type being overpowered in Gen 1. That being said, I did only challenge him in Round 1, so maybe the Round 2 fight is harder. Meanwhile, in Stadium 2, a random cave opens in the bottom of the map, where I guess your rival has just been hanging out this whole time. His fight has more variety to it, even with the overlapping types, but you still outnumber him 2-1, leaving you without much of a challenge. Beating the final fight is where Stadium 2 gives you its rewards, a Farfetch'd that knows Baton Pass from Round 1, and a Gligar with Earthquake from Round 2, the only way to get both these moves on these Pokemon in this generation. I'm torn on which game's rewards I like more. All of Stadium 1's rewards are given for beating the Gym Leader Castle and technically the Stadium mode. The only thing beating Mewtwo gets you is a harder difficulty, which, considering there are only 2 difficulties, means you get nothing for beating a Mewtwo in Round 2. Because the gift Pokemon you receive was from the Gym Leader Castle is random, it's entirely possible to not get the Pokemon you want, even after, say, 27 attempts. The only reward you get from the Stadium mode is the ability to teach a Pikachu Surf if you bring one all the way to the final round of the final cup of Round 2. This is a fun reward, but is somewhat undercut in the modern age where this will be the last battle you fight with this team. The minigame was fun, though. The Psychic you get from completing the Hall of Fame feels similarly useless. The only thing that makes him special is that he knows Amnesia, which is a good move in Generation 1, but considering Slowbro is just a better Pokemon who learns Amnesia naturally, I can't say I was too excited for Psyduck. Even if you weren't, I'm not going to train up a whole new Pokemon when I've nearly finished the game. At least Psyduck gives you a gold trophy to decorate your house in Generation 2. Meanwhile, Stadium 2 only gives you rewards for completing each difficulty. Receiving them after these final fights does feel more rewarding, but they run into a similar issue to the rewards from Stadium 1, where they serve no purpose the moment you acquire them, because you only receive them at the end of the game. Growing up playing these games, I think the only thing I really used either of them for was the Game Boy Tower. Seeing these games on a full-size TV was really cool and a nice save on batteries. I definitely remember playing the minigames with my friends and attempting the Gym Leader Castle, but I don't think I ever got very far. I've never been too concerned with the competitive aspects of Pokemon, which is probably why I always considered these games neat, but kind of pointless. But after playing both games on stream, it seems to me that they were developed with team building in mind. Between all the free Pokemon and practice battling they give you, not to mention the Academy in Stadium 2, I imagine both games introduced a lot of people to competitive Pokemon. I don't know if this information has just been lost to time, but I'm surprised these games weren't used in more real-life Pokemon tournaments. In Gen 1 in particular, there were many glitches that plagued the battle system that Stadium 1 solved, effectively acting like a post-release patch. Although its lack of use may have more to do with Stadium 1's release date being so close to the release of Gold and Silver. There may simply have not been enough time to host any tournaments before everyone was playing the shiny new games. Stadium 2 released well before Generation 3, but like I said, I couldn't find any documentation on any tournaments, official or otherwise, that would have, if nothing else, been easier for an audience to watch. If you visited or participated in any tournaments back in the day that used either of the Stadium games, I'd personally love to hear about them. I think the only thing I really preferred about Stadium 1 was the rewards you acquired throughout the experience. Being able to get copies of the starters by beating the Gym Leader Castle was a nice touch, and it would have been nice to be able to receive either free held items or decorations for your room in Stadium 2, instead of needing to gamble with the mystery gift. Overall, Stadium 2 just feels like a more refined game, which makes sense for a sequel, but I do wonder how much that has to do with Generation 2 being a more balanced experience in general.
Hey, if you made it this far in the video, just wanted to say thanks for watching. I don't usually do scripted videos like this, so any feedback would be appreciated. If you are interested, I usually stream my playthroughs here on YouTube. I don't really have a set schedule, but I'm kind of aiming for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, around 7 PM Pacific at the moment. Thanks again for watching.